call it to order. We do have a quorum, all present minus Ms. Ivacek. She notified me this morning that she wouldn't be here. Her mother was in the hospital. So keep her mother in your prayers. We'll stand with the pledge and an invocation.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father God, thank you for allowing us to join tonight. And Father, we just be with each and every one of us tonight as we make the best decisions possible for the citizens of Bartlett. Father, we just ask that you be with Miss Ivacek and her mother, and just be with each and every one of us. Keep everybody safe and healthy. It's in your name we pray. Amen. All right, Mr. Mathis.
Oh, yeah, okay. Hey, I ain't gonna be before y'all, know. I try to stay out of y'all business. I don't like them up here. If you're doing the right thing, you ain't got a problem with it. But number one question is state of inquiry. My understanding is March meeting or comments about the lift station, is that correct?
So that
Y'all
one.
heard any,
So that one more time. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
y'all had any report about the 3 Q6 commit about the lift station? The one from South Bowie to
Elm Street.
no, after
Evie Street.
The jail gonna be.
Yes, sir.
Y'all had any update on it?
Updates
On the prison?
On the prison for the lift station?
for the lift station. Yes, sir. We have.
About 200,000 gallons of water a day. Y'all had any that?
They're doing some improvements.
We can touch on that here in just a second in department reports.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll have an update on that here in just a few minutes,
Okay,
if that's okay. I mean, and I'll allow you at that time to ask the question if we didn't answer your question at that time. Is that okay?
Okay, like on 439 where I live,
Yeah, just pull the public.
we need some street signs out there. I seen one sign 25 miles per hour.
Okay.
Hey man, that's a drag strip. The
On
cops ain't gotta be on the highway. We have to talk about this thing. They won't be your quota if you don't use quota. But if they pop them, they can slow them down.
Mhm.
I done flagged down many one. I'm not gonna back down. I'll stop them. They don't frighten me.
you talking on Elm Street?
On Elm Street, that's the drag strip, man.
I agree
They
with-
run through that 100 miles.
I
They
live
run
on.
over somebody's kid.
I agree. I
Somebody
hear them drive by my house,
Jackson ain't no better.
and I hear you.
I'm not putting up with it, man.
I-
So I need to put some more signs
Be
up.
careful, but yes, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. Put some more signs up.
Absolutely.
I'm my grandma tell you know that. That's my grandma. But I don't want to see nobody get killed, man.
None of us do. You're absolutely right.
And then when they say well, it's too late, I say, it is too late. And down in front of the house, and somebody from Georgetown, come down in front of the house, they measure from my driveway down in front of what Joe Malone, that's the house right in it. And then what Elwood Lumberman used to live. And I don't have gas. I had gas, but I took my meters off and I used all electricity.
Counties, Brook Street
So what is that about?
survey?
They put signs out and said they're gonna put a gas line in there.
I don't know anything about a gas line. That would be Atmos Energy, so we'd have to get with Atmos. We'd have to get with Atmos and see what their plans are up there in that area. If they're doing upgrades.
Or
But I
utility
put a lot of
relocates.
money into that building that thing up because it was low.
Yeah.
And if they gonna dig, I want it back right like it was, like it is now.
If you see them back in the neighborhood over there, Mr. Mathis, if you'll notify the city, that way we can send our utility director out to visit with them and find out what their plans are. Because as far as I know, they haven't come into City Hall and discussed any improvements in that
They
area.
just put flags down the street, you know.
Now,
They're doing survey.
They do
Atmos
surveys.
is,
No, the county, on Brooks at
the
least.
county's doing survey work on Brook Street for the road project. There was somebody else over in that area the other day doing surveys, but I don't know.
So they doing roadways down there, or, huh? Yeah, they got paint on there. Red and yellow.
Locating the lines.
Red and yellow.
Somebody's calling to locate.
Yeah. So
So you got a survey going for roads?
we submitted for the bond project. So we've got a road expansion, so it's gonna get redone from Arnold, right, that Arnold connection from Salt Lake, Brooks to Front. That's all gonna get repaved.
Where they already repaved from,
Cottrell to
the
Arnold.
church, then up by y'all, then all the way out to the prison,
Mhm.
all the way to the stop sign, they turn right, go Sweating, or you can go
Mhm.
to Walgreens. They did that road.
That was the county road.
That's
Now they're
county.
gonna do city roads.
Okay,
we
what
sub-
city roads gonna run from?
So Salt Lake, Brooks,
So
all the way to Front Street.
initially from that intersection right there, right by the lumberyard and the railroad right here, all the way until, if you follow that all the way down Front Street, Brick Street, all the way where it connects to Salt Lake Drive and comes back out on Arnold Drive.
We got a lot of bad roads.
They go right in front of Miss Granda's house, right in front of the house that you have for sale there on the corner.
So that's where they was gonna go around by the matrix and all that.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
All they used to be. How in the hell, excuse my friend, Ted, a 19-time felon now, just got arrested not long ago. Going to put a street in his name, how did a felon get a street put in? I asked you about that last time we came up here.
Sorry, that happened way before my time.
I know you wasn't here. I know.
Different
that-
council, different,
Hey, I'm not holding you responsible, but I'm just saying, how do a felon
if the,
get a
they,
street put
He
in?
probably just platted it that way.
that's the way he just planned it. I mean,
He-
There wasn't anything went through
That's
council.
crazy, man.
the neighborhood wants to get together and do a petition to change the name of the name of the street. I'm not opposed to it. So it's
But like I said, last time I was here about that man, I told people, don't vote for him because he was 17 times felon.
yeah,
Read Bible 10 read, that's what he do.
yeah. We
But
understand.
anyway, thank you for your time.
Anything else? That it?
No, but I'm
And-
gonna
and-
wait till you talk.
Yeah, and I'll give you a chance if we didn't answer your question about that here in just a
All
second.
right,
Thank you, Mr. Mathis.
all right, thank you, Dad.
Yes, sir. All right, moving on, boards, commissions, and committees, presentations, proclamations. City Cemetery Committee monthly update, Mr. Jones.
We got, working on the new directory out there now. We've got somebody to design up and somebody's gonna build the rack and everything else and install it. And cemetery committee will help him, finish all that up and do the backboard. And one of these days, hopefully, a few months, we'll have a map out there and all the plot numbers of the Gregory Cemetery.
Perfect. Thank you. Anything else?
Since you're leaving,
No, I'm not timing. Somebody just sent me a message. Item 2, Tyner Memorial Library Board monthly update.
So you'll have it on your consent agenda, but Lori Thiem has resigned from the library board. They will be meeting Wednesday. So nothing new from there. We did have some books, about 200 or so donated from United Way. They were children's books, which is where we've seen a big need. And so those are getting cataloged and then put into the system, which will be a great addition. They were, I think, certainly books that some of the kids in this area are going to enjoy for sure.
Perfect. Thank you. Item 3, Municipal Development District monthly update. They meet Thursday night.
They're meeting Thursday night. I don't believe they met last month.
I know they were last meeting, they were finalizing their grant application process, updating that. Item number 4, Parks and Facilities Committee monthly update. City pool is open. It's been extremely busy. It's going really well though. Lots of activity in the park. Baseball season is wrapped up, I believe, out at Becky Caldwell. We've had a little bit of vandalism out there in the last couple of days. Nothing like super crazy. Just sounds like kids being kids, doing donuts in the baseball fields. So we're watching that area. Hopefully we'll catch that. Put a stop to that. Facilities. We did have a lightning strike on this building, one of the big storms, and it burned up the electrical on the outside. Electrical's all been rebuilt, and insurance replaced 2 air conditioning units, 2 complete air conditioning units. So it's good.
And the window's been replaced.
And the back window, I guess the guys were mowing. Last time they mowed City Hall, threw a rock across the yard. Just happened to hit the window just right and shattered the windows. But if you ask the guys, they didn't do it. So that's all been fixed. So that's all we got on that. Anybody else got anything to add? Moving on, we'll discuss and provide direction. Item number 5 is a presentation, update, and discussion of the Flood Infrastructure Fund and local drainage study. Lee,
From where should we present?
where
Dave, would you like a
comfortable?
clicker?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Chief's gonna get the lights for you. That way we can see.
I think he's getting.
Good evening, everybody. I am Tony Pete from MRB Group. I am a manager for a drainage project that we undertook for the city of Bartlett. And tonight, we're just going to do a little update on really 2 different projects. One of them being the Flood Infrastructure Fund project that was sponsored by Texas Water Development Board. And we got a little update to that tonight. And also, we did a 10,000 foot localized drainage study for the city, and just came up with some potential fixes and direction that we can go. All the technical information put together. And so at this time, I'm sorry. Also with me tonight is Lee Lagenfelter. He's also with MRB Group, and he's going to be presenting the technical information. Go ahead, Lee.
So, a little overview and kind of timeline. The City of Bartlett watershed study started in June of 22, and we submitted the draft report on that in September of 23. That was a TWDB, Texas Water Development Board, 5th Flood Infrastructure Fund. Category 1 is flood protection planning grants for watersheds. So that kind of defined the scope of the project a little bit, and I'll talk more about that. So we submitted the draft report in September of 23. We received comments from Texas Water Development Board and also through coordination with the city. We extended the flood study a little bit from the original. That's what I'm going to be presenting on now. And we submitted our final report in January. We received additional comments from Texas Water Development Board to finalize that. That's in progress. The study has been finalized. The report is in progress for final submittal. And basically, in realizing the results of even the extended study and seeing that we still needed to do more study for the city, the localized drainage study was started in February, and we've got our results ready now here in June. So looking at the City of Bartlett watershed study, there are kind of 2 main components. They're hydrological modeling and hydraulic modeling. So hydrological modeling has to do with rainfall, land use, soil. These are kind of the main factors to determine the types of flows that will be in the waterways and streams. And that's what the image on the left is really, kind of the purpose of that. So that blue boundary is what's known as a Huck 10 boundary. The USGS has delineated watersheds across all of US, and there are anywhere from a Huck 2 to a Huck 12. The larger the number, the smaller the watershed. That blue outline there is the Huck 10 for the upper Little River watershed. So that's about 400 square miles, 398 exactly. And we performed a hydrological study of that watershed. And then in the kind of zoom in, you can see City of Bartlett with a focus on the portion in Bell County. And it's granted it's a little small. If you've got it in front of you, it's a little bit easier to see. But that blue line there is Town Branch, including a few tributaries. So after the hydrological study to determine the flows, we did a hydraulic study of Town Branch. That's more about the geometry of the stream, so the profile and the cross sections, and running the flows that were developed through the hydrological study through a hydraulic model. To perform these, we used HMS and HECRAS, which are tools from the Army Corps of Engineers. They're basically the industry standard for H&H for short modeling. So this was the original study, and the results of that, basically we've got a flow profiles. So the gray line at the bottom is the minimum channel elevation, the bottom of Town Branch, and the blue and red lines are previous kind of nomenclature would be a 100-year storm or a 500-year storm, but we're kind of updating that nomenclature to go with 1% storm or a 0.2% storm. So as we're kind of all aware now at this point, it doesn't take 100 years or 500 years for these to recur, and the updated nomenclature kind of alludes to that. So it's a 1% chance of happening in any given year is a 100-year storm, or a 0.2% chance of happening in any given year is the 500-year storm. So those are depicted with the blue and red lines there on the profile. The green, blue, and yellow vertical lines are where Town Branch crosses a structure, a culvert, basically culverts in this case. So then on the right, so that profile on the left, on the right, the red is the hydraulic modeling boundary, and then the light blue line is the Town Branch center line. Granted, it's a little bit more to see out here. I've also got additional copies of this, so if anybody wants a copy of the presentation after, I've got it for everybody. But also on there is the floodplains. So we developed not just the profile, but we developed the actual floodplain and flood depths for the same storms, the 1% and the 0.2%. So there are two shades of blue floodplains on there to show the different ones. Then the green dots are those same structures that are the vertical lines on the left. And additional information that's on the right is any structures that are in the floodplain, and I will talk more about that in just a moment. So there were many results. There's a report that's just kind of a written report with many sections, kind of typical deal, and also 24 or so appendices with different figures, tables, and et cetera, to really provide the results of the analysis in many different ways. And something that is kind of the main point of the TWDB FIP projects is, or reporting, is to develop projects that can actually be constructed to mitigate flood risk. So we came up with A couple, because our study was over a small area in this case, we were kind of limited on our options for potential mitigation projects, but basically a couple of the crossings, we came up with a kind of high level estimate or idea of a culvert replacement and some channel grading and improvements that would improve the flow and basically reduce the spread of the floodplain on Town Branch. So the original study was the main stem of Town Branch and the way that it intersected City of Bartlett and Bell County. Okay, yeah, so the couple of kind of main results of this. So Front Street, we proposed a project to replace the culverts and also some roadway profile adjustments to match the new roadway elevation due to culvert replacement. So the small rectangle would be the culvert replacement, and then the longer green shapes are the roadway profile adjustments. That's on Front Street. And then just east of State Route 95 would be some channel improvements. So just regrading and improving the geometry of the existing channel. So this again was the original study. And then EXT for extended. So based on feedback from the city and comments received from Water Development Board, we extended the study and the figures that we created to show the study. So the first thing is extending the upstream extents. So I see 3 green dots, the leftmost one, and then upstream would be farther left of that. So looking here, from that green dot, it's kind of cut off there. And that was just due to assumptions in the modeling, but we were able to extend that in the follow-up to the study and model that too. And then the kind of main point of this extension of the 5th study was adding 3 tributaries to the hydraulic model. So I'll show them. So north of Lillian Street and northwest of Bartlett ISD, kind of just come down from the Town Branch main stem, and I'll go back and forth to make it a little easier to see where those are at. And then east of Davila Street is east of town and east of Bartlett ISD, and then it actually comes down south and then over west to Davila Street. So that's the extended modeling. And then going back, you can see where those tributaries were not included in the hydraulic model. They were included in the hydrologic model, so we had flows for those tributaries, but we did not do the geometry of them. So that was part of the extension of the study, was doing the geometry in the HEC-RAS model. Let's see. The results of the original study and the results of the extension of it were basically the same. Town Branch does not necessarily pose a significant flood risk to City of Bartlett, or at least it's not the primary cause of concern based on feedback from the city. So we looked at Town Branch, and there are some areas of concern and some room for improvement. I said I would get back to those structures in the floodplain. So when we did the original study, the city boundary that we were using showed that those structures were not in the city limits. And based on feedback, we realized that we needed to update our city limit boundary. And those structures are in city limits. And so part of a 5th Cat 1 project is structural and non-structural mitigations. So we had already looked at structural mitigations, which were the culvert replacement or channel improvements. And a non-structural measure would be something like a property buyout where, a home is in the floodplain and you can't really move the floodplain, and so you would not develop in the floodplain the next time. These are not anything that anybody's jumping to do right now. It's just a recommendation that comes out of the analysis, and that's part of what PWDB is looking for in a FIT project is structural and non-structural mitigations. So while the additional hydraulic modeling didn't really provide more information that's useful for the city on flood mitigation, the feedback and the revision of the report did to include those structures that are in the floodplain. So even by extending the fifth study, we still were not able to really get at what the city is needing the most help with, which is the localized drainage concerns inside the city. And that really comes down to Town Grange is just there's not a lot of development along. So to address the city's concerns with the localized drainage, basically led the charge on this additional study with our colleague Logan. And what they looked at was localized drainage study inside the city limits. And so it's kind of broken down into 4 distinct areas. There's the front bell area, which is kind of center, and it's the lighter shaded, roughly a rectangle with kind of a little part off to the left. That's the front bell area. Then there's the city hall area directly south of that. And then expanding out from that is basically analyzed as east of the railroad and west of the railroad. So a more localized drainage analysis. We utilized the hydrologic model that we developed for our fifth project and use that to analyze the drainage within the city. And so basically that boiled down to, it's actually 4, I had 3 when I created this, but it's actually 4 projects. So
Lee, can you put it back on the slide? Sure. Let me just add one thing on this. So in simplistic terms, the improvements that we're proposing to Bartlett are, the main reason is Bartlett is flat. So your downtown and all the areas out west are very flat and hardly no grades. That's why even on a small rain, say a ½ inch or 1 inch, we get a lot of ponding and puddling, and it's just because we're so flat. It's a good thing that y'all are on top of the hill. So all your Bartlett's basically on the top of the mound,
Right.
and it flows. All the flows go south,
Right.
and north, but there's really nothing coming to the city of Bartlett. It's all flowing away. The problem is the existing infrastructure is limited to let the water flow away from down there.
Sure.
I'll let you do the details on that. But all that red.
I didn't get to that
Okay.
yet. Yeah, well, so to Tony's point, you can see the black arrows throughout the image here that are showing which direction the flow is going. And save for, there are a couple west of City Hall there that are coming towards town, but basically they're all kind of pointing out away from town. So that kind of gets back to Tony's point. And let's see. Blue here. Basically, we've got some red lines and some blue lines. Oh, the blue is going to be storm infrastructure, basically inlets and pipes. So yeah, in the city hall area. So around here, based on looking around and seeing some existing infrastructure that could potentially be tied into, and also just the best approach for this area. And then the red is going to be ditches, either improvements, basically ditch improvements, but then also
Sometimes they renew. Sure, yeah, but yeah, but most of them existed and we're just cleaning them out and replacing driveways and driveway culverts.
Sure.
But sometimes there was almost no channel there, and now we're building a channel to make the whole city drain.
Right. So a couple of things come into play here. So one thing, term that maybe y'all are familiar with, but it was new to me at one time, which is bar ditch, a borrow ditch. So borrowing from the sides to make the crown of the road serves two purposes. You know, it's a win-win. But a bar ditch is going to be pretty shallow, and without something that happens just kind of inevitably in any ditch is siltation or, you know, erosion and collection of material at the bottom. It's shallower. It's not having quite the capacity that it did when it was created. And so either creating new ditches or something that could definitely help in the meantime. And, you know, basically thinking about this realistically, it's like there's no way anybody is going to be able to go out and do the whole town at once, right? So you got to kind of prioritize. What can we do sooner? What can we look at maybe doing later? Where getting out there and doing a new ditch, a wider, deeper ditch, where possible, good long-term idea. But there's also just cleaning up the bar ditches and getting them back to their full capacity would be a good step in the short term, where you could get some meaningful improvements without having to go all the way to the full solution. So kind of the same idea, but there are different levels of how you can do that. So yeah, basically looking at, and sorry, Myra, I meant to swap it out with you. I've got the figures.
Okay.
I didn't want to send it in advance just because I'd rather be able to present it while I'm here. But I've got it. I, of course, will give it to you electronically too, but I also have it on a hard copy. But basically, yeah, so around City Hall, on the image there are little orange squares. Those are going to be inlets. And then the blue is going to be piping. And then that will tie into both of the upstream and downstream end ditches, either existing and improved or new ditches. And so there's the City Hall is inlets and pipes. The front and belt. Yeah, front and belt, right. Front and belt, as well as west of the railroad and east of the railroad, is pretty much culverts and ditches. So culverts being driveway culverts or under road culverts. Another thing, kind of going back to Tony's point, basically, you know, when you design something at this point and you've got kind of a layout already determined and you can see where the upstream extent is and where the downstream is, you go in and you make sure it's all flowing from the top to the bottom. You make sure your pipes are sized correctly along the way. But that's not always how development happens. Sometimes it's one thing here, then back over here, then back over here. And it's not necessarily a continuous design from the inflow to the outflow. So basically, yeah, just kind of maybe adjusting the profile of the ditch or resizing some culverts to ensure that the flow is getting from the upstream to the downstream. So that's kind of, I mean, going back to the overall map, basically, you know, what we looked at for inside the city. So just north of the city, we had a couple of recommendations from the FIT project on Town Branch. And then now we've got a new set of recommendations for inside the city to relieve from the localized ponding, puddling, drainage problems inside the city. So just, and like Tony said, this is a high level analysis on this. So these figures,
What
take
are
it with a
the
grain of salt.
estimates?
What's that?
What are the estimates for each one?
Yeah, that's what
Okay.
I'm about to get into is the cost estimate. So take it with a grain of salt. This is from a high level estimate, but we do have cost estimates based on the line items, the quantities. I mean, we went through the exercise of estimating this out, but you'll know a lot better once you get into the design of each project. And this is for the whole thing at once, which they're not really necessary to do that. We could prioritize different sections of each of the, I mean, basically the smaller ones, City Hall and Front Bell would be kind of, you'd want to do those all at once, but the east and west of the railroad, you could look at one street at a time or as funding is available. But for the City Hall area, the estimate is $666,235. Yeah.
Hey, Jack, keep in mind, on these costs, these are premium costs. So this is actually repairing the road. This isn't a Band-Aid type fix. This is going in and addressing it from an engineering,
Yeah, that's.
up to an engineering standard. So a lot of the money was just fixing the roadway after installing all the storm sewer. So keep in mind though, there is could be a phase one. So this could be broken into smaller projects, kind of how do you eat an elephant? You do it one bite at a time. So this would be the kind of project that maybe would be 2 or 3 phases.
And with I know the fifth is mostly on watershed, but I'm guessing that this is a project where if we wanted to go for some kind of bridge or anything like that with FEMA, this would be eligible.
That's correct.
That was part of what determined the scope of the project was we wanted to make sure that we had a square mile of analysis so that going after funding, our analysis would qualify for that. We had that in mind in developing the study. So yeah, basically right. So the City Hall, and that would be the inlets and pipes around about 600,500 west of the railroad. So we can see that's covering a lot of streets. That's a lot of ditches, and like Tony mentioned, there is more involved in the project as far as the estimate goes. But that's $2,578,466. And then east of the railroad is $1,530,161. So these are, besides the City Hall, which is inlets and pipes, these are culvert and ditch projects, and the scope is here. And of course, this is prepared for a presentation I give, but we've got reports and figures to provide for this information.
I know those costs seem high, but all these channel repairs, that is, we've got some right-of-way clearing we have to do. That's replacing mailboxes, driveways, all the grass is, we put in topsoil and then came back with grass. And so, it's a first-class fix. So again, I was telling Lee, we have to give them some different options to say, hey, maybe at least the red you see on this map could be where the city crews would go to focus to get those particular ditches flowing tomorrow. So that everything in red is where we want to concentrate as soon as possible. We've got a large enough scope that we can submit for doing some funding assistance.
Okay, y'all talking about up here by the railroads on the south side. Like you said, bro, the ditches is flat with the ground. The water run over them. They're so clogged up, they're not big enough to take the water. They were big enough to take the water. They were dug out. The water wouldn't run. But the hose is closed up. They're running over the top of the water. And they're coming across right up there by me. That land is high. My neighbor right there, he wasn't on this after area, Chad. His yard, man, it was over that white plug right there, man. They run across the road. I don't know what kind of road you put in. If you don't be bitches to get the water out, it's going to road out. When we put roads in 2045, I told Bobby, dig the ditches first, put curbs in to make the water come out. The water won't come on the road, use the road tax. I want council too. On our side, man, the water is running over the road because you got curbing. They ain't big enough for them to take the water out. They slow down, water ain't gonna run uphill. It's gonna stand still. Well, won't you shoot through to keep on down by while y'all standing out there when they flooded? Or you talking about, that's the railroad track, what he talking about. Y'all was wrecking holes and stuff. That water set still, man, it won't flow. Certain parts it flow like it's supposed to. If they put big enough curves in and dig the ditches and put big enough curves in, if they have to buy their curves, oh well, you gotta buy curves and put it in there while this water carries through. See what I'm saying? I don't have that problem around me.
That's why we did the study right there. I mean,
You
honestly,
know, I didn't mean to take over your
No,
meeting.
you're fine. I mean, I agree, we agree, and that's why.
You're right, man.
Now we've got the engineered knowledge behind us and we've got recommendations on repairs that need to be made
Where
from
to focus
engineering,
efforts.
where to focus our efforts in the future. And so it's definitely, yeah.
That's a great point, and that's something that I basically forgot to mention, but in addition to the siltation of the ditches, there are
There are
culverts.
crushed, yeah.
Yeah, there's damaged culverts and clogged culverts, and that's another maintenance thing that could be done prior to any, big funding or CIP type projects, is clearing the culverts and, that would kind of be the main priority, and then repairing the ditches in high priority areas. Those are two things that could be done, in the shorter term.
Lee, as sometimes we get requests for people who want to replace their culverts, and I mean, the city's programs, essentially, they buy the culvert, the city can put it in. But what we don't know from a staff perspective is what's the minimum in some of these areas that those culverts need to be.
Diameters of it.
Some people want to put a 6-inch, but maybe they're at the end right here where they're at the very south end of it, and it probably needs to be an 18.
6 is probably too small. Basically, we would say somewhere between 15 to 24 inches.
All throughout.
Pretty much.
Minimum, because anything less than a 15, you can't clean. So the minimum size would be 15. I would say the majority of them would be 18.
Yeah. If you wanted to just set a standard go by, 18 would be just a flat, everybody go 18.
And
That's
obviously
something that
they're
council can adopt by ordinance and then enforce.
And obviously they're getting larger, the diameters are getting larger towards the center of the city because that's where the water shed to, where the arrows are pointing to.
And then it
is-
diverts.
Really, 18 would, it would be pretty close to the center of the city where you need to start upsizing. 18 would, for the,
Carry you most
for what
of
you're
the-
going for in a driveway culvert, 18 would be a pretty good standard citywide, but yes, then, good point. Yeah.
Talking about 18, I got a 15 in mind and all that, and I have an old city, his culvert, which is concrete, like this. I was gonna put another 15 there, but I'm not gonna upgrade to 18.
Well, so you have two 15s.
So then you essentially have,
So I got a 15-inch galvanized drain pipe already. I put it when I first moved in 19 years ago.
They're recommending minimum
at least 18. But if you got two
Well,
15s.
or
Minimum 15 per 18, but yeah, and especially if you've got two in parallel, two 15s would be.
no, he's
great.
talking, it's like the old concrete culverts, only like 5-foot sections
Oh, so
and they're
that's-
separated in their
concrete culvert.
offset.
Gotcha.
See, what happens with me when it rains, or there was Jackson in front, when he comes off the main line on Front Street, it comes this way, it's jumping over the concrete culverts, but it's going out the pipe, going down to the east.
Yeah,
But it's just,
That's the way
I
it's
need
going
to, I
down.
need to change that one out so I can.
That's all over town like that. There's a lot of those concrete culverts that are separated throughout the town, even going underneath the streets, and you get sinkholes into the streets. When it rains, it washes all the dirt out above, and then you got a hole in the street. Now you got a chug hole, and yeah, it's bad. Jennifer, do you have something you wanted to ask him? Go ahead.
I do actually. So you talk about a minimum size of 15 inches or 18 inches, but the ones that aren't being maintained at all, it doesn't matter what size it is. So how does your study address how many are blocked? And so this is a great study, it's great information. And if the main tributary isn't the issue, and you're talking about all these red lines in the future drains and culverts. And you even said yourself, if these were cleaned out, there wouldn't be, you even said that'd be top priority.
Yeah.
So why set a standard if there isn't a maintenance standard, and if there isn't, and so is that addressed in your study?
Well,
Cheat sheet.
That's a good
I hear you.
question.
Yeah, you're saying let's do our maintenance before we start flipping on the culverts.
Well, yeah, if they're all blocked, you got zero.
Yeah, but see,
Yeah.
what you saying is, a lot of places, you got ditches that's right up on top of the ground where it's covered. Then you got one up here, then you got a drop off, it's closed up, you know what I'm saying?
We've got beautiful ditches that have wonderful culverts in them. My property is just an example of that. It's completely blocked, rain comes, and my property is completely flooded, 5
It's
inches of
flooded,
water.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
Yeah, great culverts. They're 24, I may say,
Some of
maybe 30 inch
Like
culverts.
over there, where up here, they like this, day, someone like this. And it
wow.
won't go.
Worth of water.
They're eroded and full of.
Sure. Basically, it kind of comes to a point of like not wanting to speak out of turn as the engineer.
But you just did a drainage study, so how can something drain if it's not clean?
We definitely recommend the maintenance of the existing culverts for sure. That's part of the study, but it's not necessarily on us to say too much about the maintenance per se. Like, is it recommended?
Workshop.
Absolutely. Can we